Today is the day that I'm going to be talking about this quadriplegic Christian show. More specifically, ranking and reviewing every single Larryboy episode from the original VeggieTales show, and explaining how he is the worst superhero I have ever seen. In case you didn't know, I'm Inviso Bill, and this is the Media Marathon. Here we go. The episode starts off the same way that these usually do, with the main characters Bob and Larry answering an issue that they get from certain kids about problems that they have. And you know, one thing I always loved about VeggieTales over shows like 3-2-1 Penguins, Auto Be Good, and Adventures in Odyssey was that instead of trying to come up with some overarching story and deliver the lesson to you that you're supposed to learn inside the subtext, they will do an entire song and dance about the lesson they are trying to teach you to make it very clear and sure that you are going to get it. There is literally no overarching plot. Every episode is self-contained for the most part, and the show even breaks its own logic at times, all for the purpose of teaching the youngins not to speed in a school zone or whatever the lesson of the day was supposed to be about. Like, it will never not be funny to me that someone would write into the show and ask a simple question like, should they play video games instead of doing their homework or something, only to get an answer probably 8 months later, or however long it takes to produce one of these things, when the issue has presumably already solved itself a long time ago. But don't think too much about that, or you'll get to the point where you realize that VeggieTales actually takes place in 3 different universes, but more on that later. The real show begins after the host reads an email about a boy from New Mexico who is on the fence as to whether or not he should lie to his friends. And thus we begin the first installment of the Larryboy trilogy. A few kids exit the theater and talk about a movie that they finished watching when they see a strange asteroid enter the atmosphere. At the same time, Jimmy and Jerry witness that same asteroid on their screen and alert the superhero known as Larryboy, unsurprisingly, played by Larry, who has been notified of this issue by his butler, Alfred, and heads out to investigate the potential extraterrestrial life form. But before he can find it, the alien crash lands on Earth and hides inside one of the houses in the neighborhood. The next day, Laura Carrot and Junior Asparagus are having a pretend tea party in Junior's house. Junior wants to get a plate for his teddy bear, Mr. Snuggly, but doesn't have enough plates in their tea set, so he decides to use his dad's plate that was signed by a very famous bowler. Junior causes the plate to fall off the stand, and instead of either him or Laura even trying to catch it, they just watch it hit the ground and shatter. Laura, not wanting to get in trouble, leaves the house and goes home. Side note, but I think it's really funny how the point of this entire episode is that you shouldn't lie, and yet Laura tries to lie to Junior and make up excuses about why she doesn't want to stick around and get in trouble with him. Like, Laura literally lies twice before the main villain is even properly introduced, but apparently Junior is the problem. Okay then, VeggieTales, whatever you say. The teddy bear, Mr. Snuggly, starts talking, but it turns out it's not actually the bear that's talking, but it's the alien whose name is Fibrilious Minimus. Fib tells Junior to lie about the plate to his dad and that a little fib couldn't hurt anyone. His dad gets back and Junior contemplates whether or not he should lie about the plate. He does it anyway. Fib tells Junior that he put on a great performance, even though he didn't, and the two decide to go have more fun out on the town. Larryboy is then seen out on the streets as he is searching for the alien and vows to bring it into custody before he drives right past said alien. After this, a friend asks Junior what really happened to the plate, when Laura says that she didn't do it because she apparently got in trouble for Junior's tall tales. He lies. The fib has grown to monstrous proportions and kidnaps Junior before stepping on a car or something. During all this, Larryboy is busy losing at fake Candyland when he gets an alert from the city in distress and stops playing Candyland so he could start losing at a different game. A game of life. Larryboy tells the fib to drop Junior, and instead, he walks away very slowly, and Larryboy does nothing about it. After almost crashing into a wall, he flies around the air, and Alfred tries and fails to come up with a plan to stop the fib. So, Larryboy decides to eject her seat out of his jet and jump on its head in order to stop the fib. It doesn't happen. Larryboy's guy in the chair then uses science to tell him that he is useless and cannot stop the alien. But Junior can, and in order to do that and stop the fib, Junior has to tell the truth about what really happened to the plate. He does just that and the day is saved. Cool. The lesson here is that we should not lie to people and tell the truth, because if we lie, we will be abducted by a bumpy alien and forced to tell the truth on top of a water tower. That's the takeaway, right? The first installation of Larryboy is honestly funnier than I remember seeing it from almost 10 years ago back in 2016. I think it's honestly insane how the townspeople gave him credit for everything, despite the fact that he did absolutely nothing. But I am curious to see if perhaps he will be a lot less useless and able to step up his game in the next installment of the Larryboy trilogy. Fib was unironically my favorite character throughout this entire thing. The way he talks and his mannerisms are just hilarious, and he somehow came off as the most authentic and relatable character in this episode, despite the fact that the whole point of his character is that he's literally a liar. Like, he's genetically made up of lies. How insane is that his DNA is actually just lies, which they do address in universe, which is another reason why I'm bringing it up. I did prefer a small Fib to big Fib though. Once he basically became so big that he decided to pull a King Kong, that almost killed my interest. But by golly, are these antics fantastically stupid to sit through and have a laugh at, especially when the characters themselves can't help but remark about how asinine their situation is, and that none of it makes sense. Let's see if they're able to top themselves in the next installment. Larryboy and the Rumor Weed was released in 1999, 2 years after Fib from Outer Space. However, young William wouldn't see this movie until around 16 years later in 2015 when I was home alone with my sisters. This was also the first Larryboy movie I had seen, by the way. I was watching this at like 9 p.m. while my parents were out, and I distinctly remember my dad calling me and asking me how I'm doing and what I'm doing at the moment. And I told him that I was just watching Larryboy and the Milk Bandits. You'll understand why I called it that later. Before going to sleep halfway through this thing and waking up to a house filled with smoke, because I forgot to take my hot dogs off the stove from 7 hours ago. And it's a good thing that one of my sisters woke us all up because the smoke detectors were not working and we could have actually died in our sleep. And you know what? I blame this movie for that. To help you understand, here's how the events of Rumor Weed play out. Unlike the first one, we skipped right into the action. No time in the kitchen whatsoever. I guess we'll never know if little Sally wrote them a letter this time, or they're just going off script with this one. However, just like the first one, the P kids are done with the movie and exit the theater when a mugger steals their milk money. Hence why I called this Larryboy and the Milk Money Bandits or whatever, because I couldn't be bothered to remember the name. Thankfully, Larryboy was waiting for the mugger on the rooftop and shakes him loose so that he drops all the money he stole, which is unironically the most similar thing to Batman in this franchise that Larryboy has ever done and will ever do. Larryboy knocks over a plant and the plant gets shocked before falling down a sewer drain. Alfred, who was invited to junior school for some reason, tells a really boring story and then tells the class that even he was bored of his own story, remarking that he is going to go home and recharge his batteries. Because children don't know how a figure of speech works in this world, Junior tells a weed on the ground that he thinks Alfred is a robot. An asinine line of thought he arrived at, all because Alfred was tired of boring everyone in the room, including himself, and Junior has a toy with rechargeable batteries. But hey, a lot of people on TikTok do the exact same thing every day, so you know what? Maybe this Junior Asparagus kid is onto something. The weed tells a pea, and then a pickle. Then the weed tries to tell Larry, but he doesn't care and gets a call from the mayor to stop the weed spreading all over the lawns of the town. The weed quite literally tells them all in a song that she is bad news and that she only exists to stir up trouble, and for some reason, everyone still listens to her. She's like Danielle Broccoli or whatever her name is, if she was almost talented. Larryboy fails to stop the weed with all those gardening tools he has. So, Alfred tells him about a plan to drill underground and kill the weed from the root source. Larryboy loses connection underground with Alfred, and as a result, Alfred can't help him out. So, he goes into town to help for Larryboy. But the townspeople turn against him due to the rumors of him being a robot. During all this, Larryboy tries to use extreme weed killer on the weed, but presses the wrong button and ends up getting the stuffing beat out of him by the mega weed. In order to make sense of all the riots, Junior's dad asks why everyone is turned on Alfred, and puts it together that someone has been propagating rumors about Alfred. Naturally, the dad assumes that it's the weed, but the weed tells him that she never made up the rumor, only spread it. But that her source for the rumor was the kids, and I think it's funny how she calls them a reliable source of information for no other reason than to rub salt in the wound. Junior's dad tells the kids that Alfred isn't a real robot and explains what a figure of speech is, and then the kids tell everyone that he's not a real robot. The weed explodes from all of this truth spreading, literally destroyed with facts and logic, before it turns into a flower. Larryboy comes out of the sewers after the problem has already been solved with the absolute audacity of asking Alfred if he's a robot. And it turns out that he was just as impactful and useful in this movie as he was in the last one. If you remember, I said I blamed this movie for me falling asleep and my house almost catching on fire. And that's because this movie is so boring and quite literally does nothing different than the last movie. You could even make the argument that a rumor is an exaggeration of the truth, if not an outright lie. And if you do, this movie is just fib from outer space, beat for beat. The opening scene is the same. The source of conflict is the same. The main villain's powers are the same. The main villain's origin is basically the same. Larryboy's level of competence as a superhero is the same, and the resolution to all of this is exactly the same. The biggest compliment I could even give this movie, if you want to call it that, is if you want to know how to be famous on TikTok, just watch this movie and you'll be fine. Even though rumor weed wasn't much to write home about, let's just see if they can stick the landing for the last Larryboy movie episode. So, here's a fun fact about this movie. From this point on, they stop calling him Larryboy and start calling him Larryboy. Why, you may ask? Beats me. The show starts off with Alfred and Larry upstaging Bob and shoving him to the sidelines so that they can do their own episode of Larryboy for today, as opposed to whatever Bob had originally planned. And in this opening scene, Larryboy stops a pair of criminals who stole a chocolate bar, which I do like that he's a bit more of a competent hero, but clearly not competent enough as someone is able to stick a tracker on his car in broad daylight. After dealing with the Choco Bandits, these strange webs begin to show up all over the city. So the town reporter, Petunia Rhubarb, covers the story of the cobwebs. We then meet the main villain of this mini-movie, an apple with no name who wants to take over the city by using temptation. So, she's an OnlyFans cam girl. Good to know. The little worm that put the tracker on Larryboy's car explains to the apple that there are 3 people she needs to take care of before she can run the city. The reporter girl, Petunia Rhubarb, the mayor, Madame Blueberry, and the town superhero, Larryboy. Then, and only then, would she be able to take over the world. In order to put her plan into motion, she starts by ensnaring the mayor in a web of temptation for her fashion and vanity addiction, by creating a portal of some sort to a different dimension where there are a lot of dresses and makeup and fashion items. After flirting with a married man, the apple of temptation makes her way to the news van, where she ties up the cameraman and hangs him upside down before approaching Petunia. So apparently, Petunia is a gamer girl, and when the bad apple tells her that she has the beta tester version of GTA 7 on the PlayStation 6, Petunia wants to see what that's all about, and invites the apple inside to let her play the game. During this, Alfred goes to the library to learn more about the webs that have been showing up over town. However, while Alfred is away, the apple infiltrates Larryboy's secret base and gives him a taste of temptation by turning his entire superhero hideout into an actual literal chocolate room. And it's at this point where I realize that the apple's abilities are actually quite broken compared to everything else we've seen so far, because she can literally create pocket dimensions that have whatever she wants in them by using these webs. Her ability is a combination of Spider-Man, the Spot, and Infinite Tsukuyomi. Honestly, I'm not even mad that Larryboy got ensnared in her web, pun intended, because this villain is smarter and more efficient than any of the others we've seen so far. Heck, I'm almost rooting for her to win at this point. Once Alfred learns the truth behind the mysterious cobwebs and learns the true nature of the Apple clan, he learns to warn Larryboy, only to find he is too late and has to deal with the descendant of the previous Apple all on his own and stop her from weaving her web of temptation. It doesn't happen. With all of the key players out of the way, the Bad Apple, such a stupid villain name, makes a really Big Apple Entertainment Center, not that one, in Town Square, that I can only assume has dozens of booths to play checkers in, based on the fact that our great uncle's funhouse from 300 years ago was also just booths for checkers. Her henchman, Curly Worm,
That's not a real name.
broadcasts the opening and availability of the new funhouse, and this interrupts Alfred from being stuck watching the British Banana Comedy Network. Alfred and Larryboy help each other escape their own webs of temptation before they rescue the mayor and the reporter girl. Once everyone is freed from their respective pocket dimensions, Larryboy challenges the Bad Apple to a showdown. However, this is all a clever distraction, as the townspeople are using acid-laced Gatorade, that is not a joke by the way, to dissolve the webs and trap the apple in her own webs. A bit of an ironic twist, and I didn't even think about it like that until recently, but that just makes me like this whole sequence even more. The apple tries to knock over a statue, but Larryboy flings her far away, where she was never seen again. What a way to go. The day is saved, and back in the kitchen, Bob dresses up like how a 5-year-old would dress up as a superhero, before Larryboy gives us the best VeggieTales song to date. And that's it. That's every Larryboy episode. One thing I never really understood about this movie in particular was, why was the apple putting cobwebs around the statues? Like, what was the actual point of it? The whole B-plot is that the characters are trying to figure out who put them there and why. And of course, we later learned that it was the Bad Apple, which, okay, fair game, whatever. But why did she put them there in the first place? It just doesn't serve any purpose or use that I can see, and simply makes no sense to me. I do think it's kind of funny how the great-grandfather apple has a name, the worm has a name, but the main villain doesn't even have a name. At least, not a real one. And that's something that you could say about all of the villains in the Larryboy trilogy, not even just Bad Apple. But I digress. Other than those little nitpicks, solid episode I'd say. If I had to rank these in order from least favorite to favorite, it would go something like Larryboy and the Rumor Weed, Larryboy and the Fib from Outer Space, and of course, Larryboy and the Bad Apple. However, if I were going based on how much these made me laugh or how funny these were, it would go Larryboy and the Rumor Weed, Larryboy and the Bad Apple, and Larryboy and the Fib from Outer Space. I'm sorry, but Fib just steals the show, and it's absolutely hilarious to watch. If you really just want a good laugh, just go watch Fib from Outer Space. I promise you're not gonna regret it. Yes, I know that Larryboy is in League of Incredible Vegetables, and an online web series, and also a mini TV series that ran for a couple of episodes, but I'm not watching all of that at this time, because I'm just sticking to the main timeline, and I feel like this is a good enough gauge of his competency as a superhero, or rather, the lack thereof. It is a somewhat interesting concept to create a superhero that is always being saved by the citizens and not the other way around, and perhaps that's Larryboy's real superpower. Or maybe he just sucks at his job, I don't know, you tell me. I did have a lot of fun going back and watching these old shows again. It was great to see the way that their animation, writing, and character designs evolved and developed over the course of this little trilogy. And hey, I hear that there's even gonna be a Larryboy movie in 2026, so who knows? If enough people like this video, maybe I'll review that too. However, that's where I'm gonna leave off for now. Thanks for staying until the end of the video, and a big thanks to all 1,362 people who bought tickets to the Inviso show. Tell me what you thought about this video, and what you want to see me talk about next time. But, until that next time arrives, I'm Inviso, and that's all for my spill. Like, comment, hit subscribe, you'll never know when, but I'll see you next time.